physical. And I think the game we're about to talk about, Nuggets Clippers, was very physical. And it was physical because of Denver, which is not always the case. Denver, Jokic is always physical. Aaron Gordon's always physical, but the rest of their roster is not one that prefers physicality. They needed it in this game, and they built a 20-point lead. Before we get to the collapse of this, they built a 22-point fourth quarter lead, Legs, and I thought a couple important adjustments happened. One, and we'll get into this, no Russell Westbrook. He's hurt. He was out. Denver went to the mattresses in this game. They basically played five guys that have chemistry and understand their spacing in the half court. I thought the spacing was important for Jokic going off the way he did in this one. He had an incredible game. Number two, they got physical with James Harden. Like, James Harden has been killing them, and they full court pressed him. And they didn't just full court press him where they shadow, which is what they have been doing so far. They were attacking his dribble and just daring him, like, hey, saying, we're going to get physical with you out on the perimeter. We're going to not let you just play with the ball and do all your stuff. And I thought that was an important adjustment Denver made. And they talked about it in the postgame. They can't just try to shadow him and stay in front because they can't do it. They have to attack them defensively. They did that, and they built a 22-point lead.
Yeah, I agree. And they dominated, man. And I'm sitting there watching this game. You know, we were in Detroit. It was Saturday night, so our production team was just in a restaurant watching. And I'm thinking to myself, and I have no volume on it, so I'm just watching and observing. And I'm like, man, I mean, this is a dominant performance. And then you're like, okay, here we go, 2-2. That was at the beginning of the fourth quarter when I thought that and said that.
Oh
Okay,
God.
You got a 20-point lead, man, 20-point lead. Like, you're not blowing that lead. And I'm watching this, and here it comes, chipping away. Now, I think the Nuggets, you always give the team that erases that kind of deficit a lot of credit, and they deserve it because they made a lot of tough shots. I also think Denver contributed it defensively, man. Like,
No question.
And I don't know if it was Christian Brown both cases, but he's pinching way too far off the opposite corner of Norman Powell. Like, in that situation, nothing is going to get you back in the lead in the game faster than making threes. And Norman Powell is not just some average dude. The guy averaged 20 plus this year. He became an all-star. He had an all-star caliber season. He is lethally dangerous. You can't drift that far to want to get into the scrum and make some plays. And I know Christian Brown, and I don't want to single. I know one of them was for sure. I don't know if they both were, but I know he wants to get in there and mix it up. He's an athlete. He's a defender. His mindset probably is protect, help. You can't drift that far, man. They made 2 kickouts to him, and he's shooting basically fairly uncontested shots from out there. Those were 2 huge, and they were back to back. One with 230, one with 155. And that, to me, that took it from 96-89, cuts it then to 4, and then hits the next one to cut it to 1.
There was so much time left.
That was the sequence to me. Like, man, you go from 7 to 1 in 2 trips. That where it is, you're not grinding it out and trying to get to the rim and going to the foul line. Those are like 2 basically catch and shoot threes. Boom, boom, 7 to 1. Here we go. Now we got a minute and a half to go in a 1-point game. And of course, the rest is history, how that played out.
Yeah. And Denver did. I mean, it wasn't quite as extreme as what the Lakers did, but they played only 7 minutes off of their bench, to a minute 15 for Jalen Pickett, 6:44 for Peyton Watson. So they at least had a little bit of a sub or a little bit of a rotation going, but they basically did the same thing. So I think 2 things happened.
How much did you say they gave them?
7 total minutes in the second half.
7 minutes. I got news for you. The starters for the Lakers would if you had given them 7 minutes, it would have been like sending them to an all-inclusive resort in Mexico. They would have been on vacation if you could have given them 7. Give them 2. How about 2?
Well, first of all, it was 7 minutes amongst everybody. So Jokic did not sit, Christian Brown did not sit, Aaron Gordon sat for 1 minute, Michael Porter sat for 2 minutes, and Jamal Murray sat for 4. So those are the 7 minutes. It was, it wasn't like everybody got that. It was just it was 7 total minutes of bench guys playing.
Do you see now why we view teams like Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and Boston differently this year?
100%. This is where I'm about to go.
Because of not only depth, trust of the depth in those situations. I mean, I'll give you an example. Friday night, Boston, Orlando, we have the game. And, it was a very close game, controversial ending there too, but Orlando gets the win, right? Sam Hauser going into the game, who averaged like just under double figures for them off the bench, had a very good year, very important player, plays like almost 20 minutes a night. He was like 0 for 3 over the first 2 games of the series. Still got his minutes, man. They still got his minutes. They're like, so the depth and the trust of your roster. So some of that, you start to look at the front offices of these teams. What are you doing with your depth if this is as little as you trust them in big spots? So I didn't realize actually that Denver, because again, I didn't have the volume up on the game. I was just watching, and I didn't really dive into the box score after immediately to see that, because I would have said something about that too. That's just not enough minutes for your reserves, in my opinion.
Yep. Jokic, Christian go the distance. Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon each get a minute. And then Jamal Murray is the one guy that got a little bit of a spell in that second half. And he was probably the worst one down the stretch, to be honest with you. But here's where I want to go with it. These playoffs now have a theme throughout. We're a week into them, a full week, a little bit more than a week. They're so physical. We're seeing sub 100 score games in an era where we just expect 115 is what you need to win. We're seeing multiple series just get so physical. This one is physical. And teams have to adjust. And there are players who are not adjusting to that physicality well. And then number two, it's about the depth. And I think this series, the Clippers and the Lakers won. Harden is a basketball genius. He has an incredible feel for the game, and you have to run a bunch of different schemes and mix it up with him because he is a great scorer and passer, and he reads the court well. Jokic is obviously that as well. I think this series is as tough mentally as it is skill or physically or any of those things because of how dynamic both teams have to go. And I think that's why the rotation is so short. I think Denver, it's not about, oh, this guy can knock down the three, this guy can do this. It's that every time down, you have to read what your defensive coverage is, what their offensive coverage is, and then not miss a beat and be able to operate like that. And that's where I think the teams like the Lakers, like Denver, like the Knicks just don't trust guys. Because it's like, hey, and you are right, they should have spent the whole year building these guys so they're capable of doing it. But it's not like we walk you out there, stand in the corner, be ready for your shot. It's you work changing coverage every possession, and you need to know 7 different coverages and all of the variables off of them right when you check in.
That's a great point. And I think the games I've seen and been sitting there courtside, which you really get a better feel for, man. The uptick in contact that's allowed has been honestly mind-blowing to me. It's always goes up. We've heard it forever, right? And it's always like that. It's playoffs, more contact. There's never been as big a contrast as there is now. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe, to be honest with you, what I was watching in the second half of the Pistons-Knicks game. And I felt the same way about Orlando and Boston. Now, Orlando, very physical team defensively. Knicks, Pistons, same. You know, I haven't sat courtside for a Houston Golden State game, but I imagine that probably feels the same way watching Houston play defensively. So to your point, the role players that are used to the regular season, unless you're a role player for a reason, you're not, and we're not ripping these guys. You have limitations in certain areas, but you probably excel in at least one area, and that's why you're in the rotation for any NBA team. But there's certain things that you're limited. Well, you have space and time in the regular season, so your limitations aren't as exposed as much. You don't have space or time in the playoffs. So some of those limitations that coaches know you have, now you're paranoid about those things being exposed if you play a guy. And as a result, you're going to make it very difficult on your team to be able to win doing this. Because like I said, if you're the Lakers and you didn't play anybody in that game off the bench in the second half, and it's 2-1, well, how do you feel about 3-1? How's that going to make you feel? Like you're going to loosen up the purse strings? Hey, man, who's down there? You know, Gabe Vincent, let's go, man.
Also the mention that you're basically saying we didn't trust you in this close game. But now this game that's even more important, now we trust you. It's like, come on.
That's exactly my point for both perspectives. You're right. So those guys are feeling great about themselves getting on that charter, headed back to LA. I mean, you're literally and now you're saying, no, you know what? Though. Now in front of the home crowd, when it's even more pressure, because you're going to hear a reaction that's negative if you're not playing well, because there's just more pressure in that regard. And we didn't even trust you the other night. Hey man, we really need some big minutes out of you tonight in the second half if you could contribute. You've put yourself in a tough spot, man, if you make that decision. You know, if you play your guys, maybe it's not normal minutes, but at least play them. And everybody knows you shorten your rotation and you lose, and some of those guys don't play well, then it looks more about the front office. Yeah. But when you make the decision as a head coach that I'm not going there at all, any of those guys, that's more of a risky decision that you're making, where now fatigue is going to be questioned at the late game decision making, and you're responsible for it as a head coach because you couldn't figure out a way to manipulate your roster to get them just a few minutes each.
Well,
So,
here's what's interesting about this. Hold on, Legs. Here's what's interesting about this series. Obviously, I'm very close to this one because I'm covering it in person every game. So here's the thing. The Clippers went to Bogdanovich down the stretch of this game. You're down 20, you need offense, whatever. Bogdanovich has been a weak link for them because he breaks their defense. Their defense is making things hard for Denver, but he's a guy that's like, okay, now we can attack. And in the fourth quarter, Denver's up 22. They start playing prevent offense. And I think the Clippers successfully said, well, we'll risk this because maybe they won't try to score. And they didn't, and they ended up coughing up the lead. Can you go back to that in the next game? I think Denver's going to be more prepared for saying, okay, we know how to attack when he's on the court. Yes, it makes him harder to guard, but what have you. But then the flip side of that is Russell Westbrook has this foot injury. I think this game was all about Denver has 5 guys that have been together a long time. It's the 5 starters. They know how to space the court, when to cut. They have chemistry, and they went to that and really relied on it. But now Westbrook, is he back for this next game? You need depth. You can't keep playing only 5 guys. Westbrook gives you a skill set you desperately need, but he takes something from the overall chemistry of the team. So now both teams kind of have to decide where the risk reward lies on those 2 players. And I think it's actually going to be very fascinating in game 5, which each coach decides.
I agree, man. Look, this is the one everybody's got right now penciled in as the best series. I think Pistons Knicks was right there, and it's been great. But 2-2, it's even greater. What you have going forward is you're going to get 2 or 3 more of those, which is what we're going to get in this Clippers Nuggets series. This is the best series, man, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what happens now. I have a question for you, as a Denver guy, loving this team, and I don't remember off the top of my head, like, were there late, like, game-winning type situations in the year they won the title in the postseason?
Absolutely. This is the thing people don't know about Denver. They are an incredible comeback team. They came back from 3-1 twice in 2021. They beat the Lakers on comebacks. They swept them, but all of those games came down to the wire. We remember Jokic's fall away 3 that he hit over Anthony Davis.
Yeah, but was there a moment? Was there like a shot, whether it's a walk off or like in the last 2 seconds, 3 seconds of the game that gave them the lead?
No.
Did they have one of those?
No, it was always the last minute, but I don't think they had a buzzer beater in that series.
So they still had more work to do. In other words, in those games, right? But in this one, so I was just asking you that because I'm curious to see how this moment ranks, like, for Nuggets fans, like, historically. I mean, it's got to be, because it was so shocking. And it was, just like the Lorenzo Charles play, the NC State, when he won a championship in '83, very similar. Like, it's so shocking because when Jokic is coming out of that spin, there's no way in hell he's making that shot. We all know that. Like, when he left his hand, you're like, yeah, that's not going in, and you're going overtime. And boom, it's just like that. It's like, oh my God. Then you're sitting there waiting, and they finally give you the one angle that's definitive, and they make the announcement. And it's like, I can't imagine what that was like as a Nuggets fan, man, to know that you're not facing elimination, instead, very much alive. And you have this epic moment that you always remember where you were when you saw it.
Well, if you recall, Jamal Murray had not one but